Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Grant, we got Mark on the ropes today. He's been up 24 hours straight, so this would be the time to ask him trivia questions, old Iowa Central nuggets of knowledge. This is the time to get him. We probably can't get him anyway, but if so, this would be the day to do it. So, Marco, welcome back.
I got some nuggets, David.
Yeah, well, we're going to need you the next couple of weeks. Well,
Yeah, I
not
know.
next week or two, and then when GT's doing international things, we're really going to need you to be around. So Grant, lay out your travel schedule here. You got Fargo, and then do you go straight from Fargo to Paris?
Yep. Well, I got to come back, do laundry, and pack. But yeah.
Nike just doesn't send more clothes over there for you.
No, that's not how that works.
That's not how it works. So lots to get into today, boys. I talked to Gary Abbott earlier this week, actually this morning, and we're recording this on Tuesday. So first of all, happy 4th of July to everybody. Have a safe holiday weekend. We're trying to get this podcast out before the 5th anyway. I know Gary's working on the 5th. But probably the biggest news in wrestling is the allocation changes with and Grant, one of your guys, Frank Chamizo. Well, we'll start with him. Chamizo's in now, right?
Yeah, no, he was able to get into the qualification based off of, I believe, European Championships. So I think there was an article that basically stated where the athlete was given the opportunity based off of where they were in not just everything from last chance qualifier, but from either the Continental Championships where the specific athlete was in question was not allocated, and then basically the next available person, or by points, was determined to be the new Olympic alternate.
So let's try to clarify it. There were 3 paths in. First path was World, second path was Continental, third path was Last Chance. Is what you're saying, because I want to make sure we communicate this as clearly as possible. If the athlete qualified through the Worlds, then they take the person that took 6th as from bumping up. If the person qualified through the Continental, are they taking the person that took true 3rd? And then if the person had qualified that was no longer in, let's do Last Chance, and they're taking the person that took 4th. Is that the right way to think about it?
I'll say in the case of Kamal Bey, that's exactly how that happened. So Kamal was the next best guy at the tournament where either the Belarusian or Russian athlete was denied, or the Olympic spot was denied by the IOC and the UWW. So that made him be the available athlete in order to qualify for the Olympic Games based off of where that particular infraction was occurred. So like, in Kamal's case, that's where he got in. It wouldn't have been at Worlds. It wouldn't have been in whatever. But for him specifically, that would be where he got his Olympic berth.
So I actually got a chance to talk to Kamal on Saturday morning and have a little bit of a background with him. I'm friends with Mike Powell and some things like that. I've worked with him on a couple of events. He's super excited. Mark, you and I have, Grant has too, I'm sure, but we've all sat in these wild card meetings for kids to go to nationals, and this is obviously 10,000x of that. But where people think they're out, or somebody gets injured and then they get back in, this is obviously not an injury scenario. But, and we'll talk probably later about the why or the how this happened. But if you're coaching Kamal, or you're Kamal, how are you looking at this? Or Chamizo?
I think for both of them, this is an opportunity for them. They didn't have it 2 weeks ago. Now they got an opportunity. What are you going to do with it? So they're both finely tuned athletes. They're both very good at what they do. They have plenty of time to get ready mentally for the Olympics. So, it's great for them.
I will tell you that Kamal had this in the back of his head a while back, because I had asked him if he wanted to wrestle in the Beat the Streets New England event, which we can talk about here in a minute. And he's like, I can't. I got to stay healthy and ready in case I'm in. And so that was like literally a specific thing on his mind. So yeah, the way there's an article here that the list of Paris 2024 quota reallocations in freestyle 57 kgs, North Macedonia, Baku, 74 China, Belgrade, Italy, Baku, 97 Ukraine, Baku, Moldova, Baku, 125 Poland, Baku, and then Greco, Romania, Istanbul at 60, 77 United States, Istanbul, Georgia, Istanbul at 87 and 130 Bulgaria, Baku, 130 Estonia, Istanbul. I'll skip the women's, not because we don't care, but because all our athletes already qualified. So GT Istanbul was the last chance qualifier, and Baku and these other ones, Baku and Belgrade primarily, was the location of the continental for that specific countries or that specific continent qualifier, correct?
Belgrade would be the World Championships. So
okay, thank you.
And Baku would have been the European Championships that were held, where that was where also Chamizo was basically had the refereeing scandal where Azerbaijan were able to win in that particular semifinal.
So that's, first of all, thank you for the explanation. So at 74 kilos, where it says China is in based on Belgrade, that the Chinese athlete took 6th at the Worlds, and that's where Sadakov is not being allowed to wrestle. And then at 74 Italy, who's Chamizo, is Baku, which is his continental, and that's based on the Belarusian they're not being able to wrestle. Is that, do I have that part correct now?
Yes.
Okay. So I probably nerd out on this more than people care about. I mean, a lot of people just, it's the headline, which is basically Chamizo is in and Kamal Bey is in. Grant, like, let's talk about Chamizo. Like, he's got a lot of history at being good at these kind of tournaments. Is he a contender? Is he a title threat? Is he this true 16th guy in the bracket? Like, and I ask you because you see these matches. You're generally match side or close to it, and you know these athletes better than Mark and I do.
Well, I definitely think that he's a contender when it comes to a medal threat. I also think that once again, these are not necessarily the 16th best guy in the world, right? So I would highly think that once again, these are based off of continental championships. This is based off of worlds and all these other things. And I had heard, I mean, maybe it was a rumor thing on Twitter that Sabulov from Serbia might be being replaced by a specific athlete. But I think based off of that, based off the results from Worlds in 2023, Sadakov being the champ, Dake silver medal, Sabulov was the world bronze medalist. Japan's Takatani was the other bronze medalist. And then in crazy, I don't know how to pronounce this dude's name, but the Greek athlete, I'm going to need Jason Bryant on speed dial for some of these names, but
you've done a remarkable job on the first 4. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, so that was like, basically the world championships. And then basically if we go to probably some of the other guys in this particular weight class, Salko Kanov from Slovakia, he's a world silver medalist. Valiev from Albania, he was one of the last chance qualifier athletes to be there from, and he's extremely good. A journeyman athlete just like Frank Chamizo would be Bekzad Abdurakhmanov from Uzbekistan, who qualified through his Asian qualifier. He's the guy that wrestled Jordan in the 2016 Olympic Games. Has trained in the U.S. Collegiate athlete from the U.S. So
he wrestled in junior college. Tell me how fair that was.
Oh yeah.
So,
and then a little shout out to some of the Uzbek wrestlers. Abdullayev, the representative for Uzbekistan at 57 kilograms, wrestled for Menlo College. He's a national champion at NAI at 133 pounds. So they have a lot of guys that train and live in the U.S., but I think the journeyman two athletes between Bexod and Chamizo, those are guys with a lot of pedigree that could make a really good run at this weight class for potentially medal contention. Because once again, it's still a 16-man bracket, Mark. It's a small bracket.
Yeah. I'm kind of interested. Does anybody know when the new seeds will come out? Because they are going to have to reseed it.
So I think, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I have no idea when the actual whatever brackets and or seeds will come up. I'm assuming that basically, once again, they find out who is going to be the representative for all these other countries. They accept their letter, and then they get thrown into the bracket. I think the UWW will come out with a press release with potential, whatever the reseeds of those brackets, but it probably won't be for a few weeks, I would think.
So, Mark, you touched on a couple things, and guys, in the back of your mind, I'm going to forget this question, but GT, when I get done making this point, I want to know if Dake is now the prohibitive favorite in your mind at 74. But to go back, like if you just think of it as a funnel and everybody poured into the world championships and you think, oh, all the best guys are there. Well, maybe, like it's certainly possible a country has two of the best guys at a weight. All you got to do is look at the United States with Burroughs and Dake. Both of those guys would be top 8 seeds. Okay, we're not the only country that has good depth, clearly. Okay, but if you say that there's no weird upsets and the 5 best guys or women come out of the worlds, the next massive assumption that would be incorrect from the outside looking in is that all the rest of the talent is evenly divided in terms of seedings, rankings, how good they are, et cetera, over 4 continents. That's not the case. Like there's 1 or 2 continents that are significantly better than the other 2. And that's why that last chance qualifier is so important. So, Mark, when you say the seeding and the brackets, there's 2 pieces there. Number one, like when an Ugia or Sadakov comes out, everyone slides up a seed. Whoever had the 9th most points becomes the 8th seed. But if the person got drawn in, had a truckload of points and just wrestled bad at their continental, the worlds, and the last chance, they could come in and immediately jump into that top 8 seeds. And we've talked about this before. This is probably, in our mind, the best process. And Grant, you've been around this a lot. They used to have no seeding. They used to have unweighted or weighted brackets where, like, if there was 24 guys, there'd be 16 guys on one side and 8 on the other. Now it's at least 12 and 12 and 6 and 6 and 3 and 3 all the way down to the 8 quarter brackets. And whether you agree with the seeding points and formula or not, it's out there. Everybody knows it. It's not nebulous. That's really all you can ask for, is a process that, and again, everybody's going to play to the rules and do their best for it to balance out in their favor. But it's absolutely an improvement that this can happen. Mark, to your and GT's points, they're probably not done eliminating people. So if they're not done eliminating people, they can't redraw the brackets. And if they eliminate more people, they can't do the seeding either. I think like the one thing, when I was thinking about 57 kilograms, there's 4 people that have wrestled in America in that bracket, right? There's Spencer, there's Misik, there's Darian Cruz, and there's RBY. And 3 of them are unseeded.
Yep.
So 3 of them can't hit each other in the first round. And there's a 3/8 chance that one of them will hit Stevan first round.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's like I wanted to sort of preview some of these weight classes, and I know other media outlets are doing it. I think we'll wait 1 more week just for the simple fact that you don't even know who's going to be on the same side of the bracket. Like,
True.
So let me go to the other question. GT, really favorable for Dake now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle probably has to be one of the happiest people in the world, or also saddest person in the world, because he doesn't get the chance to go up against Sidakov or Sidakov, however you guys want to discuss his name. But like, I would assume that Dake wanted that guy in the bracket. Like he wants that guy, I think.
For sure, yes. I don't mean to imply. Sorry, if it implied he's wants to duck the best. That's the last thing I'm thinking.
No, for sure. But I think when you're like, okay, well, if you're just sitting back and you're like a USA Wrestling fan, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, he's not in the field, so it's more advantageous for Kyle to bring home an Olympic gold, you know, as a person that is looking at, oh yeah, this is a really awesome opportunity for Kyle to solidify himself as, you know, the Olympic probably favorite at that weight class.
He was the 1 seed. Mark, you coached a lot of guys that frankly wrestled above their seed or ranking, at least in my mind, haven't coached against them at the end of the year. I'm sure you spoke a lot to your athletes about you just control the controllables. You work on what you can work on. The other stuff, whether it works out or not, there's nothing you can do about it. But it probably changes training at least slightly if they were working on specific things for those athletes, correct?
Well, yeah, I think it also, you know, for example, Kyle Dake, he's beaten everybody else that's going to probably be there or has placed over everybody else that's there. So it opens him up to just wrestle. And he doesn't have to worry about a certain style because he's kind of walked through these guys, the ones that he's wrestled. The only one he hasn't really walked through yet he's beat him is Chamizo. He's beat him the last 2 or 3 times they've wrestled. And they were close, but they weren't real close. You know what I mean? They kind of controlled the matches. I think Chamizo will be one of the few guys that gets in, that is getting in, which will probably be seeded because he does have points he does wrestle a lot. So that's something you had talked about earlier. But I think, you know, I think Schneider, I think Dake are going to be big beneficiaries of what has happened for seeding wise and put them in position to wrestle for a gold. I'm not sure anybody else of the other 4 athletes are going to, you know, get a big advantage because of guys sitting out.
Well, at 57, I think Ugiev was the 6th seed, right? So the Chinese wrestler goes from 7 to 6 and on and so on. It does and doesn't affect Spencer in the sense that we don't know where he hasn't been drawn in yet, right?
Yep.
But if you knew where he was drawn in today, and you go, oh, well, the seeds are different, and it affects him at least in this sense, Ugiev's not in the bracket.
Yeah.
I mean, now if he was on the other side of the bracket, you can argue it doesn't matter. But by Ugiev being not in the bracket, it changes who's on his side of the bracket.
Correct.
So I think that's really important for people to understand. And, you know, the other thing is like, we're people that love wrestling, right? Like I've watched track and field Olympic trials and gymnastic trials and swimming trials just because, I mean, I saw GT's post. I turned on the Uruguay USA soccer game last night. And I think I might have given you your first like on that one, GT. But like, I'll watch stuff that matters in any sport. Like I'll watch the Kentucky Derby, like Game 7 of the NHL, Stanley Cup finals, those kind of things. But I'm not hardcore fans of all those sports. You know, we are of wrestling. So I think for a lot of people, they're just going to be like, oh, Kyle Dake's the number 1 seed. Oh, you know, how is Spencer Lee, who was an absolute monster in college and an age group world champion, not seeded? So I think that's the easy 50,000 foot approach to look at. So GT, like, I guess we'll talk about this. We talked a little bit about 57, you know, just maybe overall, I don't know. Like, I don't know how much I want to get into this because it could take us the rest of the pod, but in general, if we talked about the men's freestyle team, what's an optimistic, realistic, pessimistic number of medals to expect?
USA men's freestyle, medal chances.
Yes.
Okay. mean, I'll start from the top down. With Mason Paris, did a really good job at Worlds. Wrestled some of, once again, all of the best guys that basically had an opportunity to wrestle. He wrestled Petriashvili from Georgia, and then basically Mason qualified the weight class by getting, basically solidifying himself as the one guy to get the bronze. So like he won his bronze medal match, basically solidified that for himself. Basically went through the United States system, and was able to solidify or secure his Olympic berth from the U.S. And the U.S. is extremely talented freestyle country. So, I think that Mason Paris has a medal chance for sure. Kyle Snyder, believe that he's not placed anything but or below third since he started in 2015. So I would say that that's a very fair assessment that he would bring home a medal or have an opportunity to bring home a medal at this weight class.
To interject real quick, just so people understand, Paris is the third seed at the Olympics. Zare, the Iranian, is 1. Petriashvili, Georgia 2. Paris 3. Akgul, Turkey 4. So, and you can speak to this better than Mark and I can, but in general, those other 3 guys are considered the 3 best guys in the world. So it's good they all accumulated enough points to be divided up. Of those 3 guys, Petriashvili is arguably the most winnable match for Paris of the 3, correct?
I think it's a monster of a question. I mean, once again, Taha is like, I think it's like whatever, 12-time European champion, Olympic gold medalist. Gino is world champion, Olympic silver medalist. Zaire is, just a monster from Iran, reigning world champion.
He's the up and coming new guy. Yeah, right.
And I think the other thing that is very telling too is that like even with Mason Paris being the 3rd seeded guy, at the last Olympic Games, the Olympic champion from 2021, Gable Steveson, is not in the bracket either, which we all kind of know how Gable made his run in 2021. But between Gano and Taha, those are like, that's almost like the last like 6 or 7 world championships are between those 2 guys, and or Zaire, I think, won 2 titles in that span as well. So basically that's a really good situation for spreading out of talent, because you would hate to see Mason Paris Zaire round 1, or Taha Gano round 1 in the former system. So it's a really
the easy way to explain it is if any 3 of them are on one side of the bracket, one of them's not medaling because of the way it works.
Right.
Like if we're all on the same side of the bracket and you make the finals and you beat Mark in the semis and me in the quarters, I got to wrestle Mark to get to the 3rd place match. So, one of us, like in that case, I'm out. So the fact that he only has one of those, maybe a better way to say it is, it's good he only has one of those guys on his side, hopefully, and not until the semi. So if he can wrestle well in the prelims and the quarters, she's got 2 chances to medal, win the semi or win the 1 match for Olympic bronze, because they give out 2 bronze medals. So let me set it up this way for you, is probably better. So at 97, Magomedov was 1, Tazadinov was 2, Snyder 3, the Turk was 4, Matrashvili from Georgia 5, Fili German 6, Sajalayev was 7, Gergali from Kazakhstan is 8. Is Sajalayev the only one out here?
Yes.
Okay, so he would have Fili and then Tazadinov on his side. So, and like you said, he's like 9 for 9 in medals. He's I don't want to say in a positive, he's medaled every time he's gone to a world and Olympic games. So there's probably no reason to think anything different. What do we think of his chances of making the finals?
Well, I think once again, I think he's capable of doing about anything at this weight class. I think that Tazudanov from Bahrain is probably the other athlete that, I mean, once again, has the latest victory over Snyder, but once again, I think these are Olympic brackets. Some of these guys are extremely talented, and it's they're one leg lace away from getting teched up or something. But
Isn't that the truth?
Snyder has the most, I would say, consistent resume for this weight class. He's been a monster at this weight for a very long time. So I have no doubt of his medal chances, and then also has a really good shot at making finals.
Is Tazadanoff the one that teched him the last time?
Yeah, that was the one that Kyle was in on a shot and got hit for 4 as he was like going out of bounds.
And he's the same guy that then beat Sadulayev. Like Sadulayev stopped wrestling in the second period. So, So it'll be interesting because in college, Penn State is so good at making adjustments. Mark, you and I have talked about that. Like if a Penn State guy sees a guy twice, you almost always favor the Penn State guy, especially, sounds weird, but especially if he lost the first one. So you have the same level of confidence in Kale and company to make the right adjustments on the international stage?
I probably have a little bit more, David, than a lot of people do. Kyle shows up. He shows up for the biggest tournaments and he performs at the biggest tournaments. I'll be shocked if he's not in the finals. I think he's that good.
I just make sure you'll be shocked if he doesn't.
Yep.
Assuming the seeds hold that he doesn't flip tech fall against him.
Yep.
I think he can do it. I wouldn't be shocked if a guy that beat him once beat him again. But yeah, I mean, your point's well taken. Okay, so we go to 86. Dalata Bekov. Is that am I saying that? Dalat Bekov from Kazakhstan. Am I saying that right, GT?
I'll pull it up.
He's 1. Yazdani 2. Amin 3. Shapayev 4. Ramazanov is 5. Mongolian is 6. Kurgliev is 7. Ishiguro is 8. So Aaron Brooks is going to be drawn in here. And David Taylor would have had a top 3 seed for sure, right, GT? He was like 1 or the 2.
He would have been the number 1 seed as the reigning world champion.
So there's a perfect example how one thing changes the entire bracket, because Brooks essentially comes in at the broad bottom. And if you're watching this, I'm waving my hands around like I'm directing traffic, but Taylor comes off the top. So I'll kind of set the stage this way, Grant. Brooks has never wrestled at the senior world international level. He's had age group success. I think he was a U23 world champ, but he's never wrestled at this level. He's got the blueprint on how to beat Yazdani. He worked out with Taylor. Taylor didn't come up with that game plan by himself. He worked with that same coaching staff that Mark has so much confidence in. So I think what's interesting for Americans, then I'll get out of the way, is like, we expect, okay, Snyder's seated really high, Paris is seated really high, Dake is seated really high. We expect those guys to do well. Then we have 3 guys that aren't seated, and we think those guys can win as well. And so I'm not saying they can't all win gold medals, but it is almost like if you have to either say the seeds matter and the 3 of the guys are sort of dark horses, or you go the seeds don't matter. And so the 3 guys that are seated high are going to have to fight like hell, just because we think our other 3 unseated guys. You sort of have to be consistent. I'm in the second camp because I think Brooks might be the second best guy at this weight with at least conceptually a blueprint. I mean, he's done well against Miles Amin, who's seated really high. I know it's a different style of wrestling, but he's not scared to wrestle him, and then we'll get to Rutherford and Spencer in a minute. We've talked about Spencer before, but we might as well just go down this path. So Brooks, what's a realistic expectation for him, GT?
Well, I think going back to your seated conversation, once again, I think if you're at a non-Olympic weight class, none of your points matter at the Olympic weight class. So for in the case of Zane Rutherford, him being a world champion at 70, none of his points translate to 65 kg because he hasn't been at that weight class. So once again, there's an eye test of like, okay, well, you're a world champion at 70, but then you go down to 65. I would say probably the biggest thing when you think of those type of athletes is, for an example, I could probably use James Green domestically. James is a monster at 70 kilos and then has had less success at 65. on the international stage or even domestically at that weight class, because it's a different weight, it's a different cut, it's a different everything.
Yeah.
James at 70 kilos is a world champion or a world silver medalist caliber athlete. So I think having the point structure based off of your weight class is advantageous. Now, for instance, in the case of Aaron Brooks, which we're talking about at 86, Brooks not having a lot of, the ranking series points or traveling internationally. I mean, the gentleman was just in college last year. He's not on the Olympic circuit going out and doing Olympic style wrestling all year, gaining points, going to the world championships, going to the Ostrander tournament or the Pelicone or all of the other opportunities for Brooks to showcase his talents. But we all know how good he can be or how good he is. And once again, if you watched him at the Olympic trials and wrestling, world bronze medalist in Zahid Valencia and reigning Olympic and world champion David Taylor, those are some good wins. So I think when you get to the Olympic bracket at 86, there is a litany of crazy talent at this weight class. Not just on the top heavy, but everybody that qualified through the Continentals and Last Chance. It's a fairly deep weight class when it comes to how many names are in there that are like, former, world medalists or world champions, or if David Taylor's not in the way of Yazdani could be one of the greatest wrestlers
Of all time. Yeah.
And once again, David Taylor was there, so Yazdani isn't, right? So if we go back to, I think it's David's either quarterfinals or semifinals match in 2018, when he got kicked or back heeled off of that single attempt. That was Kurgalev he's now representing the country of Greece. That guy was one of the guys that is in this bracket, right? Ramazanov is a former Russian athlete that now wrestles for Bulgaria. Nurmagomedov was a world silver medalist or world bronze medalist from Azerbaijan at 92. He's dropped to 86. So there's a lot of talent in this weight class if you go and check these guys out. But Brooks has a really good shot to medal here.
Yeah. So Mark, an interesting thing is I think Brooks's weight cut will be better this time because he came down from 197 to 189, essentially, not that far after the end of the NCAA season. I think the other thing that GT brings up in the course of the trials, Brooks beat Zahid, super controversial end of the match, but he beat him, and he'd beaten him before by bigger margins in a weird twist because he beat Zahid a year ago. Zahid moved up, went to 92, and medaled at the non-Olympic weight, which then at the trials made it, he had a shorter path to the finals than Brooks did. So it would be interesting if Zahid was, Zahid wouldn't have any points at the Olympics because, as Grant correctly explained, you get 0 points for the non-Olympic weights. But Brooks, he's proven he can beat guys on different platforms. Like he's beat Zahid, not at the World Championship. He's beaten Miles Amin, not at the World or Olympic Championship. So when you made the Snyder prediction, what are you thinking about Brooks here?
This one's a little scarier for me just because he didn't wrestle great at the trials until he wrestled Taylor. He came back and won right at the end. Could have went either way. Had another match that he was getting beat early and he came back and won. And like Grant said, there's a lot of talent in this weight. I'm a little bit more worried with him than I am with the other guys, even with 65 and 57, to be honest with you. I think he's good enough to wrestle with everybody. I think Yazdani's going to be tough for him just because unless you've wrestled him enough, like Taylor has, you figure out how to beat him. But if you haven't wrestled him and felt that underhook and what he can do with it, it's a different ball game. And nobody that he's working out with right now has an underhook like Yazdani. They don't.
Maybe Kaler Varner does.
No.
I mean,
that's his bread and butter. He hit
Okay.
split everybody.
Well, I'm saying David Taylor figured it out. And
He
David
did.
Taylor figured it out working out with the same people that Aaron Brooks is working out with.
But
So
David had felt it before many times.
no, I was going to get there. That's a substantial difference. I'm just saying the coaching staffs are the same.
Yes.
And here's the Penn State's credit. They're not divided up now, right? Like they're not coaching Nick Lee and Zane.
No.
They're not coaching Jason Nolf and Dave. They're not coaching David and Aaron. Like their division of attention, or the amount of attention can be way more focused. It's not so divided.
You're right.
So GT, you talked about 74, and I think it's safe to just kind of summarize. I'll read the seeds off just so we can probably be a little more. Dake was 1, Sadakov 2, Bayramov 3. Good look. Georgios, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. The Greek is 4. Takatani 5, Sabalov 6, Salkazanov 7, Karnadum is 8. And then they're going to add, then there's other names in here, like Valiev is in here, Samalov is in here, Razadon is in here, and now Chamizo. So I don't know that we need to go any more through 74 kilos. So 65 kilos, Tavanyan, the Armenians 1, Amazad, the Iranians 2, Musakayev. I don't know how we describe that single leg he's got, but man, is that good. That little run, single he does. Hungarian 3, Sebastian Rivera 4, Mamedov. So is Mamedov out now, GT? Shamil Mamedov? The Russian?
I can confirm when, just give me a second.
Okay. Iliev is 6, Dudiev 7, Timur Okur from Mongolia is 8. And then you still have guys like Valdez, the Cuban, Austin Gomez, and Zane Rutherford on the draw. So while he's looking that up, Mark, initial thoughts on Zane at 65?
Weight cut.
He did a beautiful job of it.
He did a great job, David. He did a great job. But that was one time. And I'm hoping that he does it again. Like you said, look where he's at. He's at Penn State. He's got the whole team.
Let's just say he cuts his weight fine. Because it's not like, well, if he cuts his weight, he's going to kill everybody. I mean, he's still an underdog. Like, what do you see? Like, can he wrestle somebody can he make the finals realistically? If not, can he wrestle the right guy and get pulled through the backside? Because we watched him wrestle really hard on the backside at the last chance. And this is a much shorter path. You don't have to wrestle the true third. So there's one last match there. And it's only a 16-person bracket, like you guys both pointed out earlier.
Confidence level, I think he places. I think he gets a bronze.
You do?
I do. Because he's going to wrestle on the backside.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if he loses to a really good person who loses in the semis, he's out. I mean,
true.
I think that's.
But if he gets the opportunity, he will wrestle hard in the backside. And I think he's going to end up wrestling for a bronze. And I think he can get bronze.
So, GT, I would agree with Mark that if he can get to a bronze medal match, we know he's going to wrestle hard and compete. You go to these tournaments all the time and something wonky always happens. Maybe it's not as wonky as other people think, but, from at least one person's perspective, like I never saw that coming. I think the harder part for Zane Rutherford is going to be getting to a medal match, like getting to a semi, getting to a final, or getting to a bronze medal match than winning that, just because it's going to be so deep. There's absolutely no easy outs. The guys that are unseeded are considered the easy outs, like him and the Gomez's of the world are considered the easy outs, which is absolutely insane. It tells you so much about this tournament and the weight class, right?
Well, I think one thing that I would say it would be a improper argument is that the people that didn't medal at the World Championships are the easy outs, or the people that are either at the last chance qualifier and all that kind of stuff. I think it's just based off of each weight. It's completely and utterly different. And the World Championships are an entirely different monster than any of the other tournaments in the world that you basically go and watch. So I think when you look at the results from Worlds at 65, there was some wild and crazy stuff that happened there. But the Russian athlete Mamedov is in at 65.
Yeah.
He is not replaced by anybody, or there's no additional anything there. To Mark's,
So those seeds as of now will hold.
yes, I believe so, unless
Go ahead,
something
I'm sorry.
crazy happens. But I think also, if you looked at the last chance qualifier for Zane in that run that he made there against extremely talented competition, you know, like that, I mean, it's going to look like Worlds again, or it's going to look like the Olympics again for Zane. Is that, like, you know, you're going to come through that bracket, you're going to have some tough stuff, but also, once again, you're in a 16-man bracket, so all you got to do is have some little bit of separation, or if you wind up getting somebody with a big name or a top seed, doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world for you. You just become a fan of whoever it is that, you know, you're wrestling or that won that match. I think anybody that gets to a medal match at the Olympic Games has, you know, like, once again, there's a little bit of luck. There's a lot of preparation. It just depends on who gets to what matches. But I think Zane's very capable of medaling here. He's a world champion, and he's also went through one of the toughest tournaments in the world this past spring in the last chance qualifier and qualified the weight class. So I think that there's a really good opportunity for some pandemonium at this weight, because once again, 65 kg is a crazy weight class. Another guy to keep on your radar is Hajj Aliyev.
Yeah.
Talented veteran from Azerbaijan. And, you know, he qualified through the Euros. So that's a different
So think
one.
about that. If the seeds hold right now, like, he's the 6 and Musakayev's the 3. Like, if Zane draws into one of those guys first round, he's got to hope that whichever guy, let's say he loses, that his guy beats the other guy, then beats the 2 seed, and then Zane would have to go through both of those guys, you know, to win the bronze medal. So, you know, it's as it should be. There's nobody really won a wrestle at this weight class or at the tournament like this. I mean, I remember I was on the mic when Rutherford lost to Valdez, the Cuban, and Andy Robot was like, well, Rutherford's out. I'm like, well, that guy can come back through. He goes, he wore him out so bad he's going to get killed the next round. And Valdez scored like the first takedown or maybe even a 4-pointer and then got teched. So, you know, the good and bad of Zane's wrestling style is he wears you out. It's good when he wins. It's bad when he loses in this style of bracket. I guess another thing to go back just for a quick second, if Brooks has to wrestle Yazdani, is either the first round or the finals the best? Like, hey, at least he wrestles him in round 1. He's probably going to get pulled through. Or is it like, nah, because it's going to be really hard for him to wrestle that hard of a match right off the scale? Mark,
I'd rather see him wrestle him in the semis, Dave, and let the other guys beat each other up and then have that match to get into the bronze.
Yeah, again, he'd have to win 2 matches to get there, but absolutely. Yep. Okay, seeds at 57, Misic, however you say it, Higuchi, Harudian, is that how I say it? Arsen Harudian, GT?
I'll go with that.
Okay, Abakarov, Sherwatt, Ugiev, who is now out, Zhao, Abdullayev. So someone will bump to the 8 seed. I don't think it'll be any of the people, Spencer Lee, Darian Cruz, RBY. So it'll either be, I'm not going to even try to pronounce all these names. Maybe I don't know. I really don't know. But Mark,
isn't there a guy from Egypt in here, David? In this weight, I heard he'll be bumped up to. That's what I heard. He'll be the 8.
Okay, so Mark, you're a residential hawk. Tell me why Spencer Lee's going to win the tournament. I assuming that's what you're picking, right?
Yeah. And the reason is nobody's felt him. These guys haven't felt Spencer, and he brings a whole different level of ball game. If you've never wrestled him and he grabs you and he gets on top and he's able to turn like he can, I don't see anybody competing with him. Now, he had a tough time with the guy from China, who's going to be the what, number 6 seed?
So one guy's felt him.
Who?
One
Yeah,
guy
that
has felt him.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
that's who's felt him. So, I like his chances. Confidence level. I've got him right up there, probably right behind Dake as being the best chance of winning the tournament. Yeah, I'm not. This isn't funny. This is real.
That's just not what I thought you were going to say. Like,
he's that good. He is that good.
It's interesting you say win it, because if you said pick the guy most likely to medal in order, I would say Dake and then Snyder, because Snyder just medals at everything. But I understand your point that he's on the same, but you already said Snyder's going to win it anyway. So that's interesting. So GT, like Stevan Misic had the hardest path you could have last year to win it and won it. So like deservedly the number 1 seed. And some of these other guys are, Higuchi's so good. A bunch of these guys are really, really, really good. Like Abakarov, super good. I mean, Ugiyev's is a pleasure to watch. It's sad he's not going to wrestle. Maybe which side of the bracket does Spencer want to be on, and what are your thoughts on where he ends up?
Well, I think anybody that would have got a chance to watch Spencer compete at the last chance qualifier or even compete in the United States at Olympic trials, Spencer looked extremely good at our Olympic trials as well. And once again, I think, as everybody knows, our Olympic men's freestyle tournament and or country is extremely deep and extremely talented. With Thomas Gilman, Dayton Fix, Vito Arujau, like the up and coming kids, with Blaze and Forrest and all those type of guys. And also Zane Richards being our world team member and also our guy that went to the Pan Ams. For him to get through our tournament, which was great, and basically did that in a really dominant fashion. Then he goes on to wrestle at Istanbul as a last chance qualifier against guys that are, they're all trying to get the Olympic berth, right? So everybody was on the line. And Spencer looked like an absolute machine. I don't know what the category was, but I think he scored like 34 points in parterre, something just ridiculous.
Yes.
So, to Mark's point, I think when it talks about, like not being able to feel anything, or like you just don't know how, like not a lot of the international guys have felt that Spencer's style and or strength. I think that's an advantage that Spencer has. And I think also Spencer, kind of put a lot of people on notice by going and doing just beat up everybody at last chance. So I think for him, I just think put him into the bracket. Like, I don't think that there's a road to success. I don't think I don't want to get into like necessarily style matchups. I think that there's a lot of talented, like hardcore talented guys with a lot of resumes at this weight, older guys that have been around for a long time. But I think, once again, just as long as Spencer, and I would say probably, once again, this is just my own opinion, is like, I think probably one of the guys that I would not want to have Spencer wrestle right away would probably be Higuchi from Japan. And that's maybe just a style matchup for me. I mean, like, once again, I think that's just my own personal opinion of like, hey, that's the one guy that I'd be like, oh, I really don't want to have him out the gate because I think he's a very talented guy. But I also think that if he does wrestle somebody that's really talented out the gate, they're going to have to be a monster to beat Spencer. So I would have no doubt that whoever does beat Spencer rolls all the way to the finals, and then Spencer would get a wrestle back opportunity.
It's so interesting, right? Because he's phenomenally strong for that weight class, but he also doesn't feel like he's cutting a ton of weight. Like the guys like Misic and some of these other guys are just cutting truckloads of pounds, it feels like. I mean, I don't think Misic was ever a 41 pounder when they put him up there for Michigan that last year. But I mean, he made the national finals at 33. So clearly he wasn't getting horsed there. And now he's down to 25.4. So, where Spencer's been 125 his whole life. And I don't think we've ever seen him wrestle poorly because of weight cut. I mean, I think we've seen him get tired, but it was because of that leg and he couldn't really train the right way. And feels like he's as healthy as he's been in forever. And like I remember talking to Nick Piccinini, and he said, that's like the strongest guy I've ever felt on top of me. And Nick pinned him. I mean, he also got killed by him a couple times, but he pinned him. I think the secret for Spencer is, does he get a chance to get on top every match? And what I mean by that is, you can get takedowns like right on the edge. The guy puts her head down and you get the two, but that's it. Or you get the step out point. Like he's a lot like Vito. Does he get a chance to be on top of you in the middle of the mat? They get a chance to get on top of you in the middle of the mat. Like we saw Vito roll up to Santo like that in last April at US Open. It's like, it's a wrap. Like, Spencer's head in the middle, lace in his gut. I mean, most guys are really good at gut or lace. He's really good at both. I mean, like world-class good at both. And so, like if he's winning, he doesn't have to do gut, so nobody can step over him. And if the guy's got unbelievable lace defense, he can go to gut and score. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think maybe when we get right up to it, we'll hold Mark to his predictions, and I'll make mine, and I'm sure Mark's will be better than mine. So Mark did watch the pod last week, GT. He did point out one small, I want to say small, I made an error. I said that Trayshawn Ross, or that Mirasolo was beating Ross the whole time. That is not true. Ross got the first, I wouldn't call it a step out, like a great shot that he ran him out of bounds, and Mirasolo did a great job on defense to only give up one. After that, Mirasolo got the lead and then never trailed after that 2-1, but I was wrong. So I do want to, I guess, own that, take the L, however you want to say it. So, and Mark, we do appreciate you watching. We can't make it. So.
But you guys do such a good job when I'm not there. It's getting to a point where, I'm getting
Here
old.
we go.
I'm getting
Here
old.
we go, GT. Here we go.
So
like,
at least I know
the crafty old veteran trying to tell us
when I do leave. Yeah.
The glue
It's
of the
not
show.
happening anytime soon, but if I keep losing my voice and working 24 hours without sleep,
Right.
It's going to happen. And Grant, what were you making fun of me for? You said that in the podcast too. Oh, we were making fun of Mark for something. I can't remember what it was.
Well, if you don't remember,
I don't remember what we were making fun of Mark about.
I'm
I
old.
know it was something though, because I guarantee that we did about something, but
it wasn't font size. We know who that belongs to.
I want to. I can't remember what we were discussing, but I'm sure it was a very nice, subtle jab.
Here's one other thing I got to ask you guys, because I had heard this about a month ago, right after the last tournament that collected points to wrestle in the Olympics that could change the seeds. Paris won that tournament. Gio, the guy that's the number 2 seed, did not. And I thought that put Paris, giving him enough points to be the number 2 seed. Am I wrong?
I think
Paris won it, but Petriashvili got bronze. So if Gano would have not placed at that tournament, then Mason would have been the 2 seed, but Petriashvili ended up getting a bronze, then got him the points that would solidify himself as the 2 seed versus the 3 seed.
Okay, and it would have made, they were still going to be on the same side of the bracket, pretty much.
Yes.
Okay.
It was just determining whether or not it was a 2 versus a 3 seed for Mason.
Okay.
Yeah. Depends who obviously wrestles the 6 or the 7. But, if you assume that those guys are kind of all in tier 1, then, we'll talk about it more. We'll get into the ladies and the Greco next week. I just was texting with Kamal. I think we're going to get him on the pod on Thursday or Friday. So excited about that. GT, I appreciate you recording this week. I will touch base with you in a couple hours to get it from you. I'm having Wi-Fi and Google Meet issues, so that's why you're seeing my actual office instead of our backdrop. But for everybody who is watching and listening, thank you so much. And we will speak to you all next week.